The problem is, like, it scared him as much as it scared whoever got bucked off of him. A few more hours of my time is well worth the 5 hours at the hospital. It wouldn't take much to set him off. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm here with Marie, and she has brought her Nakota horse over to have me work with and kind of evaluate where he's at and if he's ready to be ridden. But could you tell us a little bit about what you know about how he got started and how you came about owning him?
Yeah, this is Mojo. He's a 5-year-old, came from out west, out in the Pine Ridge Reservation, and I had purchased him through the reservation there and watched him got broke, and he was certainly a bit wild. He could buck quite hard at the beginnings, and so really wanting him to get a little bit more time and practice before getting back on. I saw that about 2 years ago when he first got started, and then he sat for a good 6 months kind of out wild before getting ridden again on a couple of good trail rides. And kind of since then he's been with me for about a year. And since then, I have only done groundwork with him. So looking to get kind of a foundation and started a little bit softer and without the bucking, hopefully. Get him to learn and me to learn as well.
And did I hear you say, though, he bucked a couple people off?
He's bucked a couple people, yeah, for sure. There was a couple of kids that had worked with him. So a newer kid got on and just kind of went. So certainly a couple of bucks and was bucked off, I think, 5 or 6 times on a couple trail rides.
I think it's very wise of you to not just jump on and see what happens and get yourself bucked off and find out. It's good to come to a professional and have me evaluate him and see if he's ready to ride or if there's some other things going on that we should prepare him a little better with. Was he wild or just on a huge pasture?
Just on like a huge pasture, yeah.
Okay. Kind of wild.
Wild, but
you know, it's like I always try to start with connection, building the horse's connection with me. And so to me, there's like not really any better way to do that than to turn him loose and let him do what he wants and teach him to find relief with me. It's just a great way to introduce it. Most horses that are kind of wild, that grow up kind of in the wild, or even a ranch horse that grows up on a huge pasture, it's very different than a barnyard horse that gets handled or sees people all the time. So here's a good time to put a little pressure on him because he walked directly away. So I would do this a little differently if all I was looking for is connection. But also there's so many things that happen just from this first little game that I'm doing with him is he's getting to know me, and I'm saying to him, I'm actually in charge because I'm moving you. I'm controlling the round pen and moving you around. Observation-wise, I like that he's staying on the inside of the round pen. He's not on the outside. That's a really good thing. So there he's wanting to connect, but I didn't ask him to. And so I won't say like, no, don't do that, but I'll just keep him going. Because that was some offered connection. And like you said, you had a little bit of trouble getting him to go forward sometimes. And so this is like an easy opportunity for me to teach him to get relief going forward. So normally if he had no connection, you know, I would have to teach him to look into me if they were on the outside. I'm not having that problem, but he is wanting to be pretty short, meaning he's wanting to stop pretty early. But I like how he's moving around. And this is also pretty like Mustang-esque. Most Mustangs are kind of short like that. Like they don't just want to run around like crazy. They conserve their energy a lot better than domestic horses. Now here, I'm going to step in front of the drive line, and he chose to turn away. So I'm going to add pressure to that. So that was the wrong answer, but that was my idea to ask him to come in, not his. And so that's what we're shaping is like, I wanted him to come in earlier, but when I asked, not before I asked. See here, I step in front of the drive line, then he looked at me, and then I'll just flow away from him. Just let him say, give him a chance here to process that. It's kind of amazing to me, like how much you can get done just doing this little bit of liberty that I'm doing with him. Because he's understanding that I'm in charge, but he's understanding that I'm feeling for him too. So far, he's actually reminding me of my Mustang, which it's easy to have kind of recency biased. But I can see the way he would, like, when you would ask him for some of the yields, he would kind of brace his head and neck up. And that is a little bit more of a, like right now, that's a defensive posture. But the way he was stopping when I was at liberty, it was a little bit like, do I really have to keep going? Like that was challenging the leadership a little bit. So here's a perfect example. Like the flag is scarier maybe than the stick and string, but I would say the flag should be theoretically less scary what I'm doing than a human sitting on top of them with, you know, our body and coat waving in the wind and stuff. And so like for me, this is a simple thing that they would have to get, he'd have to get more okay with this. So this is the first, what I would call a yellow light. Like he should be, in my opinion, you would use something. Some people use a stick in a bag. Some people use a feed sack. I like the stick and flag. But just, that's him getting used to a little bit of what I would call energy. So the flag represents energy, but my intention is calm. And so it's like, we want to start building in that if we're calm, they can be calm. Everybody would love it. I would be out of a job if that was true. If you're just calm, your horse will be calm. We have to teach that. We have to develop that in horses. And so that's what I'm kind of working on right now, is for him to ignore the flag and read my intention. Now, obviously he's getting used to the flag at the same time, but that's almost kind of auxiliary to the idea that he's getting used to reading my intention. So, because I'm going to end up doing this with a few different tools, but you can see the yellow lights starting to turn to green. Now you also have to factor in, while riding, you don't want to just stand still, right? And I'm kind of breaking this down because I really want you to see what it would take to ride. Like, what's the difference between a horse that we would say is not really rideable yet versus one that is rideable. And so another thing I'll just do with them is I'll just work that flag above him. And you can see his default is to stop and stand still. But imagine if you're sitting on him, you're going to ask him to keep going. See here, he's a little bound up. And this is why it's good to do this more in motion. If you're sitting on them and they get stuck, you're going to put more pressure on them, likely. But then that could be where the person gets into a bind with them. So if he can get a little bit better at more freely forward, as forward is the relief. And so I'm going to have a theme of that with him. So you see the difference there? Yeah. He's walking freely. That's where the relief is. And so where people get in a problem with a horse like this is human nature would say, well, if walking around like that is good, it's probably better to trot and canter around. It's not. It's the thought. He had a forward thought under pressure, under duress of the flag. That's the goal. Eventually, yeah, you'd like to do it at all gates, but for now, I'm just building his confidence that forward is the answer, like find freely forward, because he already, to me, strikes me as a horse that if he gets stuck and then the rider does a lot to get him, has to do a lot to get him going. Now, if you can just cluck and squeeze and just make a little bit of pressure, a little bit of commotion, and then he'll go, well, then that's probably not going to set him off. But if you got to get on and you're kicking and spanking to go because he's stuck, can you see how that could escalate then to be too much? Right. And I'm going to kind of alternate between steady pressure yields, driving pressure yields, and rhythmic pressure. So that last one was rhythmic pressure. What I was doing at Liberty was more driving pressure. Now I'm going to do a few steady pressure yields. Just check out kind of how he feels there. He feels fairly heavy on the halter. So I'm going to keep doing this until we get a little bit there, a little bit more softness. Good. So when you're asking yourself, is a horse ready to ride or not, there's kind of some different categories that we're going to work. Not in a particular order, but we want him to accept the human, meaning he's not afraid of me. And so bareback mounting is a really big one for that. I would say the Liberty work that I did of getting him to stand still and catch me was part of it. And then you want to get a horse to understand pressure, which is what I'm doing now with this one, steady pressure. You got to make sure your horse accepts the saddle. And then if all those things are good to go, the last thing is for them to accept the rider. And so the difference between accepting the human and accepting the rider is you could be working on standing on a mounting blocks, sitting on a fence, being above him in different ways, working on accept the human, backing up and petting him, and just building his confidence generally with people. But that's different than riding him. And the rider is giving him aids with the rein or the leg cues, things like that. I got horses in a pasture just outside the round pen here, and they just trotted off. And that was all it took to kind of lose his attention on me. And so that tells us also that his connection with the human is a little bit fragile. And so to me, this lateral flexion is pretty weak. We want this to be really solid. You could kind of measure it and say at any of these yields, there's kind of a 0 to 10. 0 is they just don't know it. 10 is they could do it in their sleep. So 10 is perfect. Generally, for me to get on a horse, things have to be a 6 and above. Is my general rule. I have to measure it and say that's at least a 6. And right now I would say this is at like a 1. But this is important for a horse especially a horse that's already bucked people off, because this, if you're riding them, I would rather try to bend them than to just pull back on both reins, because they can still do a lot of things when you're pulling back on one. But if they can learn this as a recovery strategy, it can be used then to recover and talk him out of getting himself into more trouble if he gets bothered. So I like to prep some things before I put the saddle on. And one of those is to just let him wear a layer rope around and just kind of see if things are touching them in different ways, if that bothers them. So essentially, I've kind of already reached a bit of a verdict, which is that you've done a good job of giving him the basic ground handling skills. But to me, there's quite a bit of room left for like riding, like going a little deeper. To me, you know, riding any horse has a risk of danger involved in it, like just any horse, even one that's pretty trained and going well, like it's a risk to do that. So if you're talking about riding a green horse, especially one that got started the way he did, you want to have room for error. And so to me, I want to test them with some harder things beyond the basic ground handling and know that they can think through that really well, so that I have some room for error should he get bothered if I'm sitting on him. And right now, you could probably get on him if everything was perfect and nothing went wrong, but there's not much room for error because it's all connected. It's all about where his mind is at. And too many times we get focused on just what their body is doing, but it's where his mind is at. And so there's nothing that he's done that's that dramatic. But I can tell where his mind's at, and I can tell there's still quite a bit of self-preservation instincts in there. Like just the other horses leaving gets kind of bothered, and I just think right now the margin of error is fairly low, and so we're going to keep going here and keep trying to build that a little bit. Because it's like anytime I throw something new at him, it's bothering to him. He gets over it fairly quickly, but his first response is to get pretty bothered about it. And that's kind of what I'm speaking to. And so again, imagine if you're riding him and your rein flops. It's like all of a sudden he's rearing up, because your rein flopped. To me, that's like, you got to have more tolerances than that, and I get that a lot of people would get on him, but I've been doing this too long and I've had too many horses flip over on me to like not want to just fix it. And, for me, a few more hours of my time is well worth the 5 hours at the hospital getting x-rays or something, figuring out what broke. Because again, he's not doing these like massive reactions, but they're enough to tell me that there's some brace and some tension in there. Because I've had a horse that I was riding and the reins started flopping when they backed up, and the more they backed up, the more the reins flopped, and I'm like, hands are forward, I'm trying to say, no, I'm not asking you to back up, and things escalated very quickly, and next thing I know, the horse is coming over top of me. And that horse was a pretty reasonable horse. It shouldn't have been a big deal, but I didn't do this step. Ever since that horse, I do this step. So I'm gonna do some bareback mounting now, but before I do that, I just wanna, things that I found holes in that to me are real important. This lateral flexion, very important to me. So bareback mounting is a pretty important step in the colt starting process in my book, because this is where you really get your body all over them and they can learn to accept the human. So that's a really good tell, because it's like bareback mounting is significantly harder than getting on with a saddle. So what happens is you can sneak on with a saddle. But if you said, well, you have to get on a bareback to ride him. And if you can't get on bareback, well, then it's obvious that he's not ready to be rode. But he's getting really comfortable wearing a human at the same time. Like there, he just tolerated quite a bit. So you can see how much exposure to a human they get. Ponying them is good, but jumping up and down on their side and getting your body fully against them is like, pretty intimate, situation. But you can see his tolerances are very low to everything. That's my issue with getting on him today, is like we just need a little bit more depth of understanding there. There we go. I felt like that was like a little effort on his part. So we'll go ahead and saddle him up now. You've explained to me that he's accepting the saddle pretty well. But I don't like to take any chances, so the last thing I would do is just send him off fast. Like a lot of people think just get him cantering around. It's like, let him just wear it and be okay with it for a few minutes. Ease him around, you know. I give him a chance anyway. So here's where we want to release them on forward, not standing still. So essentially bucking is like they're not feeling like they can go forward. And you can see I had to do a lot more to get them into the canter with the saddle on compared to at Liberty. And that's what I'm trying to just show people and show you, is that it doesn't have to be a guessing game when you go to get on them. What you have, the horse is telling you the whole time if you know what to look for, you know. But people really think that riding is so different than what they're doing on the ground. It's like, it's the same horse, you know? But see the stickiness? And that's with just the saddle. Like, you add the human on top of that, and now it's more pressure. Because without the saddle, again, where was he at with just accepting the human crawling around on him? Like, not terrified of it, but not super happy about it. Essentially, like, when you add that all together, you have like 20% less in the saddle than you do on the ground, because there's just more variables put into it. Again, trying to find forward here. And you can see that stopping and facing, and that's why at Liberty I didn't have to see him do this to say that we don't want that, because I didn't ask for that, right? Even though I said in the beginning we're looking for connection, it's got to be the human's idea. Because again, you're sitting on him, it needs to be your idea of what you're doing. And if it's his idea and you have a different idea, that could become problematic. Really good. So that was the best canter departure. So now he gets to come in. And you see how he's moving. That's far enough. A lot more flow to his gait there. That was a great time to bring him in. And it was when it was my idea, not his idea. Because a horse like him, not only does he have to accept each individual thing, there's an overall theme of he's got to trust the human and be willing to see us as the leader. And right off the bat, at Liberty, I felt him challenging that a little bit. And so if you're sitting on him and his idea is to go there and your idea is to go here, you can see where you could get into a situation. I don't think there's one thing with him. It's an accumulation of all these little moments of building that trust in the human by not ambushing him with something or putting too much pressure on, but timing it where when he gets relaxed and is doing the thing that we would want to ride, then he can get relief. But yeah, I'm glad you didn't get on him. I don't think it would have went over very well. There's just a lot of holes. And unfortunately, because of the way he started, there's some baggage there of some skepticism with the human. And that's one of the things I'm always, teaching and preaching to people is sometimes it works out. Right. And you can get away with skipping a lot of steps and doing things a lot faster than maybe what I do them at first. But in the long run, I play the averages of like, I want to do this with more horses after this one. So I need to live through the experience. And then I want to not cost me time fixing things down the road. And so I manage my risk as I go by preparing the way for every step to go better and the next step to go better. What's kind of interesting to me is your intuition was very accurate. Like, it wasn't just, oh, I got a green horse and maybe I should have somebody else put the first ride. It was like you could tell there was some things in there and you were spot on. It just wouldn't take much to set him off. you know. I am curious when somebody puts a foot in the stirrup, like what his first response is. Yeah, that's what I figured. Like, so that means that he's still, the picture in his mind of getting rode is still like a scary thing to him. To me, that's just a reflection of how important all that other prep work is going to be. Like, see how much that bothers him. When you have a colt that has never experienced that, if you go as slow as I just did with that, there's no reaction because they don't know what's coming next. They've never had it. He got scared with the human on his back, and so there's like that. He's anticipating that a bit. So yeah, quite a bit of work to do still. What were your takeaways from this?
I know like he had a lot of gaps in going into like a successful ride, and so that's where I'm trying to, I guess, fill in the specifics of what those are and where to be next. Like, what are those gaps between the start and to where we get to like some trail riding at this point. And so just figuring that out and where to go next is my goal. So absolutely filling in those gaps is helpful.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for bringing him out to us.
Yeah, thank you.
Boy, he's a cool looking horse.